Good morning or good afternoon, ladies, and welcome to Torah with a Takeaway. Today I'm going to veer a little bit. It's going to be a little different kind of class. I happened to fall upon, not literally, but figuratively, some great thoughts from Shimshon Pincus. I felt they were like deeper about Emunah that I hadn't thought about before, and some thoughts for me to ponder. And then I found myself almost the entire shir just using his words. So this is unusual for me not to use a lot of sources. I do have a little bit from Chaim Sleep at the end, but I do have that. I wanted to base it on, and it's only on a small little portion of our parsha. Last week we covered Yisro and everything about him. Today we're going to cover the preamble to the Kabbalah Torah, to accepting the Torah. The Jews were told some things. We're going to read some verses here, and we're going to basically concentrate and focus on them, and we'll come up with some basic tenets of Judaism in a deeper sense than at least I have realized in the past. Maybe all of you know them already, so it's just a review. Okay, so we find that where is it? Am I, all of a sudden, I don't have the verse that I want? Oh no, 1 second. No, it's not here. Okay, right, okay. So when it was in the Bachodesh Hashlishi, let's say Bnei Israel Me'eretz Mitzrayim, in the third month after the Jews had exited Egypt, B'yom hazeh bo midbar Sinai. They got to the Sinai desert. Moshe Allah el Elokim. Moshe went up to Hashem. Vayikrav elav Hashem minahar lemor. And Hashem called him from the mountain, saying, Kos somar lebeis Yaakov v'sageh libnei Israel. This is what you should say for really almost all of them. Mefarshim say the women. The women were told the Torah first, because they were the whole atmosphere in the home, and they were supposed to be nurturing the whole home. They had to hear the message first. Other people give other interpretations. The women had to hear first because this is what you couldn't say later. Their husbands coerced them, because men are usually stronger than women. I'm sorry if there are any karate experts in the audience, but usually the women, are sometimes, could physically be forced. You could say later the women were all forced. So therefore, they were offered the Torah first, and then only then the men. I heard several explanations. One I heard from, who was it? Let me just see this here. Rav Shimon Schwab. He said something very interesting, that women should know all the Torah. Now they say, Kos somar lebeis Yaakov. You should say it in a soft way to women, but yet to men, you should say it tough as nails. So Rav Shimon Schwab wonders, he says, women and men are equally obligated in all the commandments. Why should women hear it in a soft tone and men hear it in a more harsh tone? And the reason given is, he says, is that men have this additional burden upon them, that they have to learn Torah every spare moment that they have when they're not doing urgent things in life. Women don't have that. But he said women have to know all the commandments as well as men, because he says women have a mitzvah to rebuke their children and even their husbands. This is what Rav Shimon Schwab says. So women should know the Torah equally to men. Now, when he's telling them all this, it says, Atem re'isem, you see, this is where we're going to hyper-focus today. You have seen Asher asisi leMitzrayim, what I've done to the Egyptians, v'asasechem al kanfei nisharim, and I raised you on the wings of eagles, and avias chamelai, and I brought you to me, va'ata, and now, if you im shama tishma'u b'koli, if you're going to listen to my voice, ushmartem es brisi, and keep my covenant, vayisim li segula mikol ha'amim, and you'll be a treasure to me from all the nations, ki li kol ha'aretz, because I own the whole land, v'atem tiyu li mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh. You'll be for me a nation of priests and a holy nation. These are the words. It's a very important paragraph. This is the preamble for the whole giving of the Torah. So we have to ask a few questions. We have to get into it a little bit. But before we ask the questions, Rav Shimshon Pincus tells us, if someone's going to write and author a book of any set, of any sort, the first thing any publisher is going to ask him, whether it's a holy book or a secular book, the publisher will ask him, what is the topic, the main subject of your book? Usually they want to see an outline. And usually if anybody is worth their salt in writing, they make an outline. because, like otherwise you get off topic, you can go off into millions of tangents and you lose the whole sight of what you're talking about. For example, if you write a book about Hilchos Shabbos and inside, Rav Shimshon Pincus says you're writing about anything else, kashrus or whatever, you're veering off the topic. You're not keeping to the purpose of the book, why people buying the book, why you're writing the book, and you lose it. So this paragraph we've just recited is supposedly the introduction, the essence of all of the giving of the Torah. So we have to analyze it to understand. This is in Perek Yutes Pasuk Daled, chapter 19, verse 4. And if you want to look at it again, and we will be going more detail in a few minutes. But anyways, we made a pact with Hashem in this paragraph. And this pact is, we have to ponder what is the whole purpose of the giving of the Torah. That's what's if you have to say what the essence is, this paragraph, that's what we're talking about. Now, Rav Shimshon Pincus says, when it talks about, I want you to be for me a holy nation and my treasure, and you're going to be, you see what I did in Mitzrayim, and I'm bringing you close to me, and you should be if you notice, there's, Rav Shimshon Pincus mentions that all of our forefathers were given many promises of what they were going to get for their children. For example, Avram Avinu in the Bris Bein HaBasarim, in the pact of the parts, he was told, L'zarachan asati es haaretz hazos, I'll give your children the land of Israel. And when he did a bris milah to himself, he was told, I'm going to make a v'nasati l'cha l'zaracha charechas eretz megurecha, I'm going to give you a land of Israel. LeYitzchak, he promised, I'm going to give you the land of Israel. To Yaakov, he promised, I'm going to give you the land of Israel. Nowhere do any of our forefathers receive a promise that their children will receive the Torah. Isn't that unusual? Isn't that? And why Israel, of all things? Like, why are we promised? Is the main thing of all our lives Israel, Eretz Yisrael? It's not Torah. It's not the purpose of the whole, covenant with the Jewish people. Now, it's true that Israel is, important, but without keeping Torah and mitzvahs, it's nothing. It's an empty shell. It's a holy land, but it's just a tool for us to use to get closer to Hashem, right? And that's why we're getting, the land of Israel. But why isn't Torah mentioned, until the time later of Moshe Rabbeinu? We don't hear talk of the Torah whatsoever. So says Rav Shimshon Pincus, the reason why the Torah is not mentioned is because one could err and think, if they're told your purpose is to keep my Torah and my commandments, people may err and think that they're supposed to, that our whole purpose in keeping the Torah is to get reward. Or we could think that maybe there's inherent wisdom in the Torah. Now, they're all true. Those are true facts, that we're supposed to get reward, and we're supposed to get the land of Israel, and we're supposed to get a lot of wisdom in Torah. But that's not the reason. And that's why we're not given a promise beforehand of getting the Torah, because the essence of Torah is none of the above. Even though it does include Eretz Yisrael, even though it does include getting a reward and punishment, and that's inherent in keeping commandments, and even though there is a promise about, there was wisdom, the wisdom of Torah has been always unbelievable, that's not the reason why we're given anything. Here we're told we're making a pact with Hashem. It says in the verse the verses that we just cited, it says, Shamartem es brisi v'yisam li segula. You're keeping my covenant. The covenant, says Rav Shimshon Pincus, is like a ksuba between a husband and wife. It's not a work contract. It doesn't say anywhere in any ksuba that a woman has to wash the dishes and make sure the floor is swept at least once a day, and she has to have nourishing meals and chicken at least once a week. It doesn't say that in the ksuba. And it doesn't say that, he has to always be immaculately dressed or whatever. That's not the main thing of a ksuba. The main thing of a ksuba is a relationship. And Yisrael Segula, you're going to be my treasure. That is what our pact is with Hashem. The whole thing, that's the introduction to keeping the whole Torah, is You should know, my precious children, that the reason I'm commanding you with the Torah, is because I want you to have a relationship with me. This is what Hashem wants. He said, like, for example, a person could get so lost in doing a business, he could forget. He's buying and selling all day. He could forget that the reason he has his business is really to make parnasa. We can lose sight by all the commandments that are in front of us. And we can lose sight of all the things we have to do, that our real purpose is to develop a relationship with Hashem. He expounds upon this more. He says, it's interesting, it's no mention in the Torah, or a hint to it in one place about benching, but our sages instituted that we're supposed to make 100 blessings a day, and that we're supposed to be praying 3 times a day. Now, why is that not part of the Torah? That's only rabbinic injunctions. Like, how can that be that it's not part of the actual Torah? And it's, it's all, this is it's a takana from our forefathers. It's takanas avos. It's called, like Avram established Shacharis, Yitzchak Mincha, and Yaakov Mariv. And this is like the reason why we have all these blessings is because we're not commanded in them, just like the Torah is not mentioned to our forefathers. The basic idea of saying blessings is not to just say them and be finished with it. This is part of a relationship. It's a self-understood that if a husband and wife don't communicate, there's no marriage. There's got to be communication. And Hashem wants us to communicate with him always. And that's why that's a prerequisite, a preamble to getting the whole Torah. And that's why it's not openly mentioned anywhere about saying blessings. Because, and every Jew, whether he's an ignoramus or whether he's the greatest scholar, they all are obligated in making blessings and praying and davening. And the whole reason for that is this is what Hashem is really looking for with keeping the whole Torah. It's not that commandments like people think. It says, Shamartim is brisi. It doesn't say keep my commandments, keep our covenant, keep our pact. Our pact is, I am your God and you are my servant. And that's our relationship. And he bases it on something. We'll see it in a minute. And so Eretz Yisrael, the reason why it's mentioned by our forefathers, but it's really not part of the covenant, so to speak. It's mentioned to each one of our forefathers, is just like a bride and groom when they make a pact. We're going to build a home together. This is our home. This is where we're meant to be to keep our mitzvahs. But the house is just, even though people get nostalgic about a house, because this is where I lived all these years, and this is where we did this, and this is where we did that. It's still not the essence of a home. The essence of a home are the inhabitants. It's the ruach inside of a home. It's the spirit inside of a home. I hope you follow me till now, because it's a little bit more just pure philosophy today. But it is something we need to hear every once in a while. We get lost in the weeds and we forget. There's many people all caught up with keeping every single letter of the Torah, which is very, very important. But the purpose of all the Torah mitzvahs is to get close to Hashem. That he brings down from the Mesilas Yesharim, the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto brings down in his introduction to the whole Sefer, Mesilas Yesharim, the path of the just. Very famous lines. I guess we should read them because it's important. These are lines that everybody should repeat all the time. Yesoda Chasidus, the essence of being pious, v'shorish havodah tmima, and the root of pure service, who she isparer v'is'ametz, a person has to make clear and make true to himself, ma chovaso ba'olamo, a person has to know, what am I here in the world for? That's what this is the preamble to Mesilas Yesharim. These are questions we have to ask ourselves every day. What are we here in the world for? V'lama tzarich sheyasim mabato magamaso b'chol asher hu amel kol yemei chayav. And what is a person supposed to put his focus on when he does his tasks every day? Sometimes we get off track. We think we're just have a bunch of tasks, but it's all for a purpose, and we have to revisit these, not just on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. We have to revisit these every once in a while. And our sages have told us, man was created only to find pleasure in the divine. And a person is supposed to find enjoyment from the warmth of the divine providence, from the Shekhinah, the divine presence. Umakom ha'idun hazeh bemes hu olam haba. And the place that really a person will bask in the joy of the Shekhinah will be in the world to come. Now, people have always analyzed this first paragraph in the Mesilas Yesharim. They always came up with this, that the place really to enjoy is that next world. This world is never, it's a second choice. But Rav Pinkus explains this in a little bit different slant. It's true, he says, that this world in trajectory is really a hallway to the world to come. It really is. The main place where we're going to have total pleasure forever is the world to come. But he says the following. He said, how do we know that the world to come is where it's at? Because this world is temporary in nature. So since it's temporary in nature, we can assume it's not the ultimate goal. Anything temporary is not, infinite, and it's not going to be forever. But he says the essence of life, because there's two parts of life. One is the goal of life, and one is the essence of life. The goal is ultimately, the closer we get to Hashem, we'll have pleasure in the world to come. That most people are aware of. But he says, not only is it going to be in the world to come, but even in this world has a unique function. The essence is developed here to the degree that we find joy in the divine presence in this world, that's our main focus, that gives us the most pleasure. That is where we're going to get the world to come. Because all that happens really when a person passes away is he's stripped of his body. His soul is what leaves his body, his essence, and whatever he's made of his essence in this world is what he's going to be in the world to come. So far what we've said is that what we see here in the introduction to getting the Torah, Hashem makes a pact with the Jewish people, and the pact is like a kasuba. It's not like a contract that you do this and you do that, because there's no mention of it. There's no mention of mitzvahs. To keep my mitzvahs doesn't say that here, of this paragraph that's given to us at length. It all says is if you just keep my covenant and you be for me a treasure. Okay, so really at Har Sinai, we have a hint about Har Sinai whenever we give a bracha under the chuppah to the chassid and kala. It says, Mekadesh amo Yisrael al yedei chuppah v'kiddushin. He sanctifies his people through chuppah, and kiddushin is the chuppah service, actually, that this woman, chuppah and kiddushin are two essences, but we'll begin to them in more length in a few minutes. But anyways, it says the chuppah of Klal Yisrael was Hashem held Har Sinai over their heads, and he told them, if you'll get the Torah, then good. If you won't accept it, you're going to be buried right here. And the Kiddushin is that we were alone with Hashem at Har Sinai. The Jewish people and Hashem, we heard his voice, we had a closeness at that point, and that's what's supposed to be replicated at all times. Rav Pinkus gives an example. He said, imagine a couple gets married, and after the chuppah, they go into the yichud room. They go in the room where they're supposed to be alone together, and the groom pulls out a newspaper. And the kala is like taken aback. She says, what are you doing? Here's their moment together. They're finally married alone together. And he takes out a newspaper. And he says, the ultimate goal of marriage really is to have children. So when we have our first son, he'll have his bris, then we'll all celebrate and spend time together. Right now, this is not the time, but that's not the point. He says marriage is not about, okay, we're going to have children and we're doing what it says in the Torah. There's also an element of a relationship, of a closeness. And this relationship is what was supposed to happen at Har Sinai. And this is the relationship that each one of us is supposed to have with Hashem. And that culminates in the world to come, where we're finally given reward for it. So again, Eretz Yisrael is just a tool by which, even though it was a total promise, Hashem never mentions overtly about, Torah, because again, we're afraid that there could be reward given, it hints that there's reward when we talk about Torah and mitzvahs. There's no mention made of Torah, also because of the intelligence involved that we gain from Torah, because all that is a byproduct. Eretz Yisrael Torah as far as intelligence, Torah as far as reward and punishment is not the main thing of getting the Torah. The main thing is God wanted a covenant with us. He wants us to have a relationship with him. And that's really the whole essence, the whole introduction to getting the Torah, is we have to know these facts. And that's what the Mesilas Yesharim is alluding to, that of course, that you're supposed to lisaneg al Hashem, you're supposed to have pleasure even in this world, and that pleasure should be developed, cultivated, the pleasure of being close to Hashem, and ultimately in the world to come, it'll bear fruit, but it's really only developed in this world. And really that's the purpose, the ultimate purpose of the entire creation. Now, I learned something years ago, and most of you maybe learned it too, Basic Judaism 101. We've all probably learned it. Anyone that went to a Beis Yaakov learned this probably in high school already. And but I thought it presented slightly differently this time, and I wanted to share it with you. The Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha, tells us that the purpose of the whole creation is God didn't want us to have what's called nama de chesufa. God did not want us to feel that we got all these presents, so he gave us this world with all of its challenges, so we could come to the next world feeling, wasn't like, all God's gift. I won't feel so stupid. I did sweat a lot in this world to earn the little that I got, I did sweat for it, so I'll feel better that I'm not getting a handout. That's how we learned it. But the Chayvas Halevavos tells us in Shar B'Tachon, Chesed Hashem unedava tova. He says that all that we receive from Hashem is really kindness and a real gift, including this world. He says like this, even that which we consider that we've had hardships, and most of us can say we've all gone through some interesting things in this world, it's never totally bleak and negative. And not only that, there's more positive than negative always at any given moment. And in the course of one's life, it's more positive than negative. Now, I was once thinking of a mashal, somebody's eating breakfast and they're musing, or they're whatever they're called, ruminating about things that they're going bad in their life. They're thinking, oh, look how hard I have it, Hashem. You gave me this. Meanwhile, they're eating. Every moment they're gaining pleasure as they're eating. They're feeding themselves. And as they're eating, they're thinking about what they don't have. As God is personally giving them their breakfast for the morning. And a person feels the recharge whenever they eat or drink first thing in the morning. They're not feeling that connection to Hashem, which is unbelievable. Brings down a Gemara. I think it's Gemara. It's either Gemara or a Medrash. One second. Let me make sure I quote this properly because I didn't write it in my notes. Okay, it's in Vayikra Rabbah. Rav Yirmiyahu Barav Eliezer says in Vayikra Rabbah, that's the Medrash Rabbah, Vayikra, he says, ultimately, there's going to be a voice from heaven announcing, whoever put up a mezuzah, here's your reward. Whoever put on tzitzis, here's your reward. Whoever did this, here's your reward. There'll be rewards for everything we've done in this world. But it ends up in saying, if a person, prides himself on that which he pushed himself to do. For example, it says, if you bought a lulav and you did this mitzvah of lulav, you could have done it without money. You couldn't have had a mezuzah without owning a place to live, without having a space to call home. You couldn't afford tzitzis without clothing. You couldn't have given truma without a field. You couldn't have given a korban without a behema. You wouldn't have owned an animal. You wouldn't have been able to give a korban. Every time we supposedly gave of ourselves, we gave from what he gave us back to him. What have we really done? What have we really given? So nama de chesufa, that we've had this free handout, we shouldn't feel about it. We still have a free handout, even if there is some degree of suffering in this world, that's granted. But we tend to keep looking at what we still want. But we have so much already that we don't pay attention to. Avram Avinu, when he was talking to Hashem at the Bris Bein HaBesarim, Hashem tells Avram, don't be afraid, Avram. Al tira Avram, anochi magen lecha, schar harbe ma'od. I will give you much reward. I'll protect you. I'll give you reward. And Avram says, supposedly sounding like a complaint, Elokim, Hashem Elokim matitein li. God, what can you give me? Vanochi olech ariri. And I'm barren. I can't bear children. Now it seems like a complaint. God gave him everything. He says, I'll protect you. I'll take care of you. And he says, no, you didn't give me anything. What can you give me? What do you mean, what can you give me? Avram for sure knows that Hashem's capable of giving anything. What do you mean, what are you giving me? For sure he gave him everything. So what is Avram's complaint? Says Rav Shimshon Pincus that when he says, I'll give you a lot of reward, Avram says, I want a connection with you. I want children, so they should be able, I want to serve you forever. If not through me, then through my offspring. I want to have a connection. That's why he's so badly, that's why all our matriarchs and patriarchs were longing for children, not because they wanted a baby in the house. We all know that an idea of children, grandchildren, it's all an idea as that it like gives us an eternal type of feeling. We're not leaving this world totally, we're leaving something behind. There's some part of us still that we're giving to humanity or to Hashem or whatever it is. People like to feel that they've done something that benefited the whole world. Anyways, so the Avram Avinu, he wanted to use that for Hashem, that eternity, not himself, but I want to eternally have a relationship with you, Hashem. I want to eternally be connected with you. I want to have a relationship. That's what he wanted. So the idea is what we look for is not what can I take some more? Of course we have to daven. We have to daven for what we need. We should daven all the time. Not be afraid to ask for anything that we need, because that keeps the relationship going. We need that. We need those prayers. That's why Hashem makes it hard for us. We need prayers. But at the same time, we have to keep in focus that our purpose in life is to find pleasure with that which we have and turn it towards the divine, to be appreciative and connected to Hashem for having given us everything, which we really don't deserve. Okay, now let's take this phrase by phrase in this little paragraph. We said Perkei Tes Pasuk Dalet, chapter 19, verse 4. It says, Atem re'isem, you have seen. When it says Atem, that is you in the plural. The Vilna Gaon tells us, whenever we see something written in plural throughout the Tanakh, the plural always means each person by person. And whenever we see something written in singular tense, or not tense, gender, then that means the whole community. So when it says Atem Re'isem, it means every single one of your souls have seen what I've done, taking everybody out of Egypt and everything. You all saw what I did to Egypt. Now, when it says, it's also showing I have a relationship with each one of you, not the whole nation, as a whole, and we're leaving out the individuals. I have a relationship with every single Jew. Re'isem, you have seen. Our whole belief system in Judaism is based on witness. It's not based on, faith. Our religion is based on having personally witnessed the giving of the Torah, the splitting of the Red Sea, and the exodus of Egypt. I know I'm going backwards, but that's just the way I remembered it. And the plagues, all of those things, we were seen by 2.5 million people, but it was something that each person was meant to experience. It was a meaningful relationship with each and every one of you. Millions of people. There's a story that Rav Shimshon Pincus brings down that one time there was a bacher in yeshiva who was asked by his Rebbe, a bacher in yeshiva asked his Rebbe, he said, how do we know for sure that God gave us the Torah? So his Rebbe answered him, we have to have faith, we have to have emunah. Rav Shimshon Pincus said, this is apikorsis, this is heresy. We don't have emunah to have that we got the Torah. That is a visual, personal experience. We have witnesses, many, many millions. We have something personal. the idea that, you have to have faith when it's a question of the kind of commandments we have and how the Rabbanim interpret things, that's been passed down from throughout the centuries. That, yes, but not our faith. Our basis of our faith is on personal witnessing. And you personally saw Mitzrayim. Now, why Mitzrayim? If Shimshon Pinkus tells us no nation was punished like that with 10 plagues. And why were they punished like that? Because what they did to us. Hashem shows his tremendous love for us, that he had to enact 10 plagues personally, for each one a week in duration, going on like almost a whole year with all these plagues because of my precious children, the Jewish people. We see how much Hashem loves his children, the Jewish people, but Atem, that's like the Vilna Gaon says, each one of you personally I loved. And I took you on the wings of eagles. By the way, that's also a prediction how Hashem is going to bring Mashiach, also on the wings of eagles. And now we know it could have a different connotation. It could possibly mean airplanes, flights. But anyways, Kanfei Nesharim, why does it say I brought you on the wings of eagles? Other birds, when they transport their offspring, they transport them between their feet because they're afraid of birds higher up than them that could hurt them. Whereas the eagle is not afraid of anyone except for man. So therefore he puts his offspring on his back, and he's only afraid of what's under him, not what's over him. So I took you, now there's no comparison really between that and Hashem because, so it's just like a mushal comparison that I had no one else to be afraid of. There's no one in my league. I took you, but I brought you. Why did I bring you on this? In other words, the wings of eagles means like Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the Red Sea, the journey in the desert. I took you personally, miraculously to be mine. And Vaviaschem Elain, I brought you close to me, like the Yichud room. Vayam Shamoa Tishma'u. And now, if you will listen to all of this, because I've established myself as loving you and being your master, then you have to keep the Torah. Ushmartim es brisi, and you should keep my covenant. Don't do sins, and you should be the treasure, uniquely the treasure for me. Now, treasures aren't usually out there for the world. When you call the Jewish people Am Segula, a treasure is hidden. We're not there to be, here we are. I want everyone, on Wall Street to know there's special people called the Jewish people. We have to develop our inner sources because that really is what the treasure is. Any inner, something is not something that's to be viewed by the world. I brought down this story to you before in another context that when Chizkiyahu Hamelech, Hezekiah, I guess they call it in English, was sick, he got better, and then the king of Bavel came to visit him with a whole group of people, and he started showing them the Beis Hamikdash and different artifacts and things like that. And Hashem asked him who was here, and he said, the Navi asked him who was here, and he said, Melech Bavel, as if like he had something to show for himself. And we find that he was censured for that. He said the whole Beis Hamikdash is going to be destroyed because of this action. Because if you have something special, it's not there to be shown to Melech Bavel. It's a private thing. It's an important thing. It's just like if you have a relationship with somebody that's special, there's deep secrets that you never say to anybody else. It's just between the two of you because you're have such an intimate relationship. Or there's things you don't talk about to other people because it's so intimate. Or also there's an idea of silence. When two people are very close, they don't even have to talk sometimes. I mean, talking is important too. I need it to keep the relationship going, but there are moments you can have silence with someone you have a closeness with. You should be for me a mamleches kohanim, a nation of priests. Hashem has plenty of other people to do other jobs. All religions have priests, and the priests are always a small percentage of the other nations. I said, Hashem to Moshe, all of you are the kohanim out of the 70 nations. We're not simple, we're important people. In fact, we're told by many sources, like the Balaturim says it says that if we are worthy, and at the end of days, all the Jewish people are going to be Kohanim Gedolim. Like, we don't need this. Is only because of our sin of the golden calf that we needed the tribe of Levi. Otherwise, the Jews are all meant to be a nation of priests. We are supposed to be, And that means important people. We're not simple. Whenever we don't hold of ourselves as simple, whenever we do hold ourselves as simple people, we're forgetting this verse. You're supposed to be a mamlechas kohanim and goy kadosh. You're supposed to be, for me, I heard once an interpretation. I don't remember who says this. I have a vague feeling it's Rav Hirsch, and I did not have a chance to look it up. But Rav Hirsch, Rashi says, lo pachos v'lo yoser, not more and not less. The firstborn, well, like I said, the Balaturim says that we're supposed to all be Kohanim Gedolim. Other sources say it's just going to be the Bechorim. It's a good question. Thank you for asking. And so, yeah, some people say the Bechorim, but the Balaturim and others, I forgot who else besides the Balaturim, say that at the end of days we'll all be Kohanim. But even if we don't assume actual jobs in the Beis HaMikdash, here is the preamble to the whole Torah. You have to feel you're mamlechas kohanim. You have a destiny. You're a great person. You have greatness expected of you. Look at our forefathers. They did these minutiae of sins, and they were grounded by Hashem for what they did. Now they lost out in this world because those were all the sins they did. They did so few, says Rav Dessler. And in the world to come, they're going straight front row center. They have the best seats in Olam Haba, and the only reason they have it hard in this world is because of those few tiny sins, which by us, halavai, we should do such sins. Like Moshe hit a rock instead of speaking to it. I think that, we're all guilty of things much worse than that, In any case, we are goy kadosh. We're a holy people. Yachol kamoni. Hashem says, are you holy like me? No, we're not supposed to be like Hashem, but a kadoshim tiyu. We have a potential of holiness and we have a potential of greatness. This is the preamble to getting the Torah. Don't bring the filth of the world into your house. Eila hadvarim, these are the things I'm telling you, says Hashem. And Rashi says, lo pachos v'lo yoser. And I'm going back now to what Rav Hirsch, I believe, says on this lo, because a very interesting, Rashi is very terse. And he says, no more and no less. What do you mean no more and no less? So according to Rav Pinkus here, he says, no more and no less is expected of you. You are supposed to be a holy people, and you're supposed to be a Kohanim, a very noble nobility. That that you're supposed to be the greatest person, greatest people. But Rav Hirsch says something different. He says, no more, no less means that Goy Kadosh means you keep separate from the other nations. You don't let the filth of the world penetrate. But Mamlechas Kohanim means a Kohen is to serve the people. He affiliates with people. He does things for people. So you're like a light to the nations and a holy nation. Lo pachos v'lo yoser, no more, no less means don't be such a teacher that you will lose your own holiness, and don't be so holy that you don't inspire other people. That's how we're supposed to live our lives. That's not more and not less. Rapinka says we're not supposed to be normal. We're supposed to be special. We have to be special. You can't just say, well, I'm just a normal person. We have obligations. This is the crux of the whole thing. Hashem thought we're his treasure, and treasure is in a spiritual way. He called us his treasure, and he wants us to be his treasure, and he wants us to be the king, the kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Now, we find also that, as we mentioned before, that all these things were not mentioned. Doesn't mention Torah and mitzvahs as the preamble to the whole giving of the Torah. It doesn't. Eretz Yisrael was only mentioned to the Avos, and we said that that's just something to use as the house that we're going to live in. But no more, no less, we have this bond with Hashem that we're supposed to keep forever. And then the Jews all responded, everything you told us, Naaseh v'nishma, we're going to keep, even though we didn't hear all the commandments. And then we got this forced. Supposedly, the Medrash tells us that Kaf Aleim Har Kagigis, Har Sinai was put over our heads, so to speak. There was a forcing. We already said we're going to do everything. Why now do we have to be forced? So Rav Pinkus gives an interpretation. He says there's two steps in marriage. There's called Kiddushin, and then there's Nisuin. Kiddushin is, it's like giving the ring. In the olden days, these used to be two separate ceremonies. Sometimes they would give the person the ring and they could not get married for another year, that you're going to be for me. You know, it's you're just going to be mine. All this means is that this woman is not going to hang out with other men, and hopefully he won't do the same with other women. And you are now, this is our marriage. This is our marriage. You are now married. But that's all. The husband's obligation in what he has to do for his wife only belong after Nisuin. Nisuin is the yichud room. It's symbolized by the chuppah as well. That's when they're alone together, and that's when they're truly obligated to each other in the bond of marriage. So when we say Nasa v'nishma, when the Jews said we're going to do, and later we're going to understand, that's Kiddushin. We made a bond. We're going to do whatever you want, Hashem. We're going to be only yours. But sometimes in an everyday life, you know, there's more expected. Woman has to leave her parents' home and live with her husband. In today's world, he said people change their last names to fit their new mission in life. The house of Avram Avinu, Avram Ivri, later became known as Yehudim. We were later had to change our last name. We're not just Avram who stood on the other side, who wanted you, Hashem. We're now have this Nisuin, that we're only alone with you, Hashem. It's not enough just to keep the Torah. The idea of forcing the Torah upon them, so to speak, by holding the chuppah over our heads, says Rav Pinkus, is not an idea of forcing per se. Some people say it means they were forced they were just at that moment when they were at Har Sinai, they felt forced. There's no other way but except serving you, Hashem. I don't see any other purpose in life. Rav Pinkus expands upon this, and he says, the purpose when you're going to get all the Torah and all the mitzvahs is not just to keep the Torah. It's not. You have to have yichud with me. You have to have a relationship with me. You have to build with me. You have to be committed to me. That's what I want. More than the Torah and more than mitzvahs. That's just a springboard to helping this relationship wherever the Mesilas Yesharim says we're going to get the whole Olam Haba. We stay up all night on Shavuos to show that, you know, when Hashem had the whole Har Sinai over our heads, people had thoughts, okay, I'll keep all the Torah, but I'm going to be normal. Hashem says, no, that's not what I want. I want you to be alone with me. I want you to be there for me. I want you to stay up all night like the first night like a wedding night. Like you stay up all night because it's your first night together. And I want to have this relationship to you. There's been many challenges the Jewish people, says Rav Pinkus. The daughter of the Chavetz Chaim granddaughter of Chavetz Chaim went to her grandfather, the Chavetz Chaim, and this was told in the family of the Chavetz Chaim. She approached her Zaidi. This is a girl who got bitten by the Haskalah, by the reform movement and all that it entailed. And she was enlightenment, if you want to call it that. And she was going to university, and she went to her grandfather, the Chavetz Chaim, and she tells him, Zayda, how long you going to live in the dark? How long you going to live in the dark? She told this to her grandfather. In other words, you can have Torah and mitzvahs. That was the first idea of the Enlightenment with Moses Mendelssohn. You can have the Torah, but you could be normal, live like everybody else does in the world, be involved with the news, be up with all the, with all the stuff going on in the world, but be normal. Rav Pinkus wrote this over 20 years ago, and he says, today's test in our generation is the computer. The computer with all of its colors and bings and pretty little tunes and all the different artwork. He says this is fashioned by very intelligent people wanting to take your brain, wanting to take your mind, your attention, your center focus away from everything else. This is like the Paro and Mitzrayim of modern day. We forget what our real relationship is because people are so addicted to it. He said he knew a man that was responsible for putting a lot of Torah on the computer that we have today. Like parts of Talmud and everything. He installed it. I don't know. He doesn't, I have no idea who, and he doesn't mention who, and we don't want to know who. But whoever it was, he says he once caught this person playing a game on the computer with cars, playing, car games on the computer. And he looked at the man. He says, you just put so much Torah on the computer. He says, I can't help myself. I'm addicted. This is like something that takes away our whole brain, takes away this is an approach to Torah is you're mine. When your body leaves you, what did you make of the Dveikus B'Hashem? Le'anos beziv hashchina. What did you do of all this? Hisanig al Hashem. What did you do about appreciating my world and serving me and making me the main thing, the mainstay in your life when you have a big competition out there? Now, just to end, what we have to say, the Eitz Chaim, the Sefer Eitz Chaim, Rav Chaim Mintz says, Ba'ata. The whole paragraph starts out with the word "and now," and there's a Rashi on it when it says "and now," if you will do all these things. Rashi says, "Imata tekablu alechem." If now you'll accept all this upon yourself, Yarav lechem mikan ve'elech. If you take it upon yourself now, it's from then on going to be sweet to you. Shekol haschalos kashos. All beginnings are hard. It talks about learning Torah, but it talks about practicing any commandment. Things are hard in the beginning, and they ease up at the end. He brings down from the Nefesh HaChaim, who says, whenever we consider doing a mitzvah, using a little friction, keeping Torah mitzvahs, we're always supposed to have a little friction. We're not supposed to totally, change ourselves from end to end, or it's too difficult. But if we endeavor to do something that's a little bit hard for us, that's like strengthening a muscle. That's how you strengthen muscles. You have to a little bit of friction every day, and then until it gets toned, and then you do a little harder exercises. Same thing here too. He says what happens is, and Epstein says, it makes, whenever we start pushing ourselves to do something that's difficult, Hashem makes something is affected in the upper worlds, and that kedusha envelops you just for having started. And then it becomes easier and sweeter afterwards because you now have divine assistance. So I'll answer that question at the end. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And I hope now we can unmute ourselves and I can answer some of these people had comments and questions. And if there's a few moments, I will show you some of these pictures.